Boys and girls, welcome back to Milk and Cookies Total War. This is Indie Pride, and we're going to be casting, or I'm going to be casting, a round of 32 matchup between Rush4in here on Suebi versus Janka Doodle on Athens. And this is going to be a pretty interesting matchup because Rush4in here has opted for a very rush-centric build. Of course, his name would give you that kind of indication, but I'm not sure that it's going to work out super well on this map. Pyramids is very flat, and it's very easy to get kited on. I think these kind of rush armies that Rush4in brought with Suebi here are much more suited for heavily forested maps where your opponent can't really skirmish you down as well, and there's a lot of different terrain that you can hide behind and forest to kind of cover you from arrow fire. But the Athens build, Janka Doodle has actually brought a bunch of really high-tier skirmish troops. He has some Kreen Archers, some Rhodian Slingers, and I think that's going to make it really difficult for Suebi to close the gap. So it's going to obviously come down to micro and how well and effectively Athens kites here. But right now, I'd say that this build definitely favors the Athenian player. The Hippeus Lancers also are going to match up really well versus the Noble Riders. I actually don't think that elite tier melee cav on this patch is worth it at all. I think the Aspis Companion cav and some of the other elite melee cavalry really aren't worth it on this patch. It's a lot of money to spend on cavalry that doesn't always do a whole lot of work, because again, on this patch, cavalry in general kills things much slower. Hammer and anvils can still be very devastating, and they can absolutely turn an infantry engagement in your favor and win you the battle. But like, say this noble rider engages one of the citizen cavalry, it's not going to wrap up that fight very quickly as it would have on some other patches. So it's going to be interesting here. I don't know exactly how this rush build is going to pan out. I would say that it probably wasn't the best choice of build from Rush4in, but we're gonna see how this ends up working out. I like the positioning from Janka Doodle at the beginning here. I think taking this hill makes a lot of sense, and it's going to give him some opportunity to kite his opponent and make this rush build from Rush4in much less effective. Looks like there might be a cavalry engagement. Yeah, there is a cavalry engagement on the flank here. There's going to be Riders of the Hunt versus the Citizen Cavalry, and then actually the Noble Riders are going to get charged by the Hippeus Lancers. And again, I don't think this is really a cavalry fight that Suebi wants to take. I think if he had some spears backing it up, this might be a fight that he wants to take, but off the charge, the Noble Riders are going to get beat up by those Hippeus Lancers, and he's actually going to pull out now and lose some more guys. So yeah, this has actually not been a great cav fight from him so far. I don't think that was the best engagement he could have taken, but that's alright. A bunch of these Kreen Archers and Belair Slingers are now shooting into the Swordmasters, and it looks like the Citizen Cavalry is going to come in here and just blunt the charge. I actually don't really like that move very much from the Citizen Cav, although they actually did a lot of damage on that charge. I don't know how many they killed, but they knocked down the entire unit. But charging swords from the front on this patch with cavalry generally doesn't work too well unless they're cataphracts. And the engagement is going to start in earnest here. And a bunch of these Swordmasters are going to run directly onto the Hoplites. That was a really good charge from the Hippeus Lancers. That's going to do a lot of damage to these Swordmasters, I think. And then some of the Riders of the Hunt are going to overlap and hit the back of the Hippeus. And this is not really where the Hippeus Lancers want to be. I think some decisive hammer and anvils once the infantry engagement started would have been maybe a better use of them. It was a good charge into the Swordmasters, but now they're kind of caught in melee, and I don't think they're going to be able to pull out very quickly. But it's a little blobby at the moment. And actually, he did... Wow. Suebi actually cleared up that engagement on the side, took out all that cavalry, I guess with some of the help from the spear wall. And he actually now has some Riders of the Hunt. They're going to get some flanking opportunities. And the Athenian line here is kind of crumbling at the moment. There's some wavering here and a bunch of cavalry coming in from the flank. He mismicroed a little bit there, that's right. The Riders of the Hunt, they didn't really actually get a charge off at all. And that might actually hurt him, because these, if they were hammer and anviling, that would be a really, really important blow here. But he's going to mismicro them a little bit, and they're going to get caught on the Thracian Warriors. And then over on this flank, the Hippeus Lancers against the Riders of the Hunt. Hippeus should win that fight relatively convincingly, but there are some Noble Riders coming in to reinforce. So those Hippeus are probably going to die, and I believe the Athenian general is dead as well. So I like his positioning here with some of the skirmish units, and I think they'll be able to get a lot of shots off. But if this cavalry, which it'll collapse on this flank. If this cavalry comes in and gets into the skirmishers, I think that Janka Doodle is going to be in some trouble here. His melee engagement's going pretty well. The Swordmasters have activated Headhunt. In the middle here, should be able to cut through Thorax Swordsman very quickly. I say very quickly for this patch. Obviously on other patches they would have died much faster. But some hammer and anviling into the back of the thorax hoplites. And his line's starting to waver. Berserkers are doing a lot of damage over on the flank. And I think it's going to come down to getting these Noble Riders into the skirmish units, which I think he has the ability to do if he micros appropriately. So he just needs to get his cavalry under control. Main line for Athens is wavering, and I think Rush4in is starting to take control of this battle. As long as he doesn't lose his cavalry here, I think he's in really good shape to win this one. Athenian main line is crumbling. He has a bunch of units in the flanks. This is about to be a mass rout. It was very interesting here because Rush4in actually chose Suebi and Parthia as his two factions, and Janka Doodle had the opportunity to give Rush4in Parthia, which I think is a much worse matchup for Parthia. I mean, they have cataphracts for sure, but cutting through all of those hoplites with cavalry is very difficult. And this is turning, and this is going to be Rush4in's battle. So I don't think that Janka Doodle actually did as much kiting as he could have with the build that he brought. His positioning was good. I think putting his men on the hill there was great. I think he took a melee engagement way too early. He didn't need to do that. I was a little surprised at how well the Noble Riders did on the flanks against that cavalry. I think he actually did end up reinforcing with some of the spears on the flanks, but normally Noble Riders I don't think are going to fare super well versus Pace Lancers or any elite tier shock cavalry. So that was interesting and kind of shocked me a little bit. I think Janka Doodle could have done a better job kiting there. I think if he had just not sought an infantry engagement at all, because I mean that's obviously what Suebi wanted, I think he would have been in better shape here. But I think he made the mistake of being like, I'm on this hill here, it's a really good position for me, it's going to be hard for him to attack. But it actually didn't end up being very hard for him at all, and those spear wall did work. They didn't lose anything. 136 kills, 131 kills. Some of the cavalry, of course, was mismicro a little bit, but I would have thought that the Athenian cavalry would have fared better in those melee engagements. They did not. Berserkers on the flanks did really well. Swordmasters cut through the center, and those skirmishers did not pay for themselves. These are expensive. If you're going to bring 4 elite tier skirmishers, you have to make sure that they get a lot of their volleys off, and I think they didn't really. So, yes, if I was Janka Doodle, I think that he should have done a little bit more skirmishing there, a little bit more kiting, and avoided that infantry engagement, because that's exactly what Suebi wanted. So it actually ended up being kind of a mass rout there. They actually did a practice battle before this, Arverni versus Carthage, and Janka Doodle won with Arverni, but they didn't count that as a real battle. So unfortunately, Janka Doodle is going to be out of the tournament now and not make it into the round of 16. I don't know how many of these from the round of 32 I'll be casting, probably not very many. I just happened to see that they got on and wanted to cast and spectate something. So congratulations to Rush4in. You're going to be in the top 16 of the tournament, and well played, sir. That was not what I expected at all, to be honest. That was interesting to say